Well, hello, and good Friday to you. I'm sending you solstice blessings and also a little bit of inquiry into how you're wanting to move forward in co-creation of your beautiful life for the next 6 months of 2019. And I think it's always such a beautiful time of the year. It's actually my sister's birthday today, so I have a lot of gratitude and celebration on June 21st. And I want to know, what are you celebrating in how far you've come, not only in your life, because during the time that's passed between the moment you were born and this moment that you're in right now, a lot has happened. And I love what Viktor Frankl says about that you can, and if you don't know who he is, he wrote an incredible book called When a Man Searches for Meaning. He was a survivor of the Holocaust, and there's some beautiful insight in that book, so I highly recommend it for some lovely winter reading this weekend. That he says that basically that I paraphrase it, but that I have had a very interesting life of adventures, and won few and lost a few and learned so much in between. And I totally resonate with that in my own life, of so much challenge and heartache, but at the same time also so much beauty and so much abundance in relationships, in the way that I'm creating my life, in the way that I show up and serve people. And I think that the biggest part of that is that I wouldn't change any of it, even though I wouldn't wish what I've been through on my worst enemy. And I think that there's a lot of forgiveness in just really acknowledging that I've been through a lot, so have you. And while a lot of those experiences may have been joyful and enriching and providing you with beautiful memories that you'll cherish for the rest of your life. Hi, Nikki. There are other experiences just like me that maybe have probably not been very kind and have instead been highly traumatizing, emotionally, mentally, physically, in many ways, and to incredible varying degrees of everything between that sort of luminal time that we kind of find ourselves in now, in the northern hemisphere, where you've sort of reached the peak of summer and your days start to get shorter, and in the southern hemisphere we've sort of reached the peak of our coldest winters, and we're going back toward the sunlight. And I think that regardless of where you find yourself in that's what I call the luminal space, or the waiting room, where a lot of my clients, and I'm finding myself there again, of that next level of growth, that next level of expansion that feels a little unsettling, because it's the unknown, and our nervous systems love to have predictability. They like to have things constant, and unfortunately that's not very good for our creative mind. You cannot create outside of not having safety. So if you're not feeling safe, you can't create, you can't co-create, you can't vision, you can't use your imagination to move you into that next level of your own personal evolution. So, and this is where the trauma part plays in, is if you're constantly living in the past, archiving the past, staying in the story of all the reasons and justifications why you can't move forward, nothing changes. So one of the ways that you can kind of move into that very compassionate inquiry is to ask, what is the value of creating the limitation of your life based on the future, where you're not present to create something greater than you currently know? And I think that really ties in beautifully to, spending some time this weekend asking yourself, what is it that you want to create in your life? And in order to do that, it's so funny because I kind of feel like, gosh, the internet is so noisy at the moment, isn't it? And I'm a great pattern connector, so I can really, my brain loves to go and see patterns and connect all the dots and sort of bring that into my awareness of the collective consciousness. Aren't they beautiful, Nikki? I have a whole tree full of rosy ring parakeets, and because the days are shorter now, they're starting to fly back to the coop, and those ones that you can hear are the big hardy-daws, those sort of very ancient, prehistoric looking birds that spend a lot more time on the ground than they do in the air. So gosh, I've lost my train of thought, but yeah, so at the moment everybody's talking about money manifestation and 10Ks and 10 days and you know, putting on fairy godmother wings and waving a magic wand, and you know, while that all might be very well meaning, I think it's very very abusive in a way to put that out there, because we're all in different stages of our growth, and before we can actually have an abundant mindset or start to manifest what we want, we have to get to the root cause of why we're self-sabotaging those attempts. You know, this is where it breaks my heart to see so many women, especially because we're so in touch with our feeling and our desires, and a lot of times how we actually block those out because it just feels like, I know, isn't it awful? But you know, your money is neutral, as we know, and it doesn't have a charge on it until we put meaning into money, or what success looks like, or what wealth looks like for us. And if we don't get down to the root of where we created the beliefs, and I don't even like to call them limiting beliefs, because I think they serve a purpose in childhood, when we actually didn't really have a concept of not ever getting what we wanted. We were just miraculous manifestors, just as we trusted that our bodies would heal every time we scraped our knee or we knocked our head. We never had any programming or limiting beliefs around that until they were sort of assigned to us. And gosh, my mind's going in a million different directions right here, but what am I wanting to share with you about that? You can't get into a creative state, right? Money comes through people, and if we're not willing to receive because we have some protective or defensive belief that we created as a child, because maybe we lost our tuck money in the playground, and our parents are like, how could you be so stupid, or how could you be so careless? And that a sign, right, that projection around us, who just happened to lose, you know, didn't have a value, knew there was always going to be more. We decided that from that day onward, and on a very subconscious level, that we can't be trusted with money. And these are very unconscious beliefs that keep running to protect us from ever feeling like we're stupid or we were careless and having to defend that position ever again. And so, I mean, I could talk about money all day, because it's not money that's the problem. It's our protective and defensive beliefs that we created as children to keep us safe from ever feeling like there was going to be a negative consequence towards us for being careless with money, for example. So, you know, a lot of they are traumatic memories, right? They're experiences where we start to self-abandon and set up these defensive or protective beliefs that are running on our subconscious right into adulthood, and we don't even know that they're there until we actually start to get curious about where we got that stuff from. So a lot of times you can't even remember, right? Because there were pre-verbal days between 1 and 3 where we were already picking up the energies in the house. So there's been studies done that even children, when they're sleeping, can still feel the stress on the morphic field of their parents fighting over money or anything actually while you're asleep. And this gets embedded on our nervous system. This gets embedded into our subconscious. And even though we might not remember it because you were too young at the time when they happen, there are probably other things that you remember all too well, and you try not to think about it if you don't have it. So it's not just spiritual bypassing, it's all done from the level of the nervous system that's doing everything it possibly can to make sure that we're in survival. We can't thrive if we're in survival mode, right? So we all need safety, belonging, and connection. And while we've all been traumatized through relationship, that's where we heal, through relationships. So obviously your trauma and what's running on your implicit and explicit memories, as far as irrational and irrational fear, they're very unique to you. We all share two things in common, and that's with our own meaning making of trauma, and that's in the collective field of what trauma is. So the first thing is that those traumas are right now affecting the way that you're showing up in the world, the way that you're either in a suffering state or you're in a beautiful state. And as I said, we are interconnected. So we're picking up, especially if you're highly sensitive empaths, which I know a lot of you are, you're interacting at the level that you were when you get triggered by somebody else's fear of lack or scarcity or limitation or whatever it is that's running on their lives. So I just invite you to take some time over Solstice, to take some time over the weekend, to just push pause on the world. Just take a breath. And if you're in Johannesburg, please come and join me for the Breathe Fully, the somatic breathwork workshop that I'll be doing on Sunday the 30th. It's so powerful in just disengaging from the mind and allowing yourself to be really safely embodied through the breath, to allow yourself to viscerally shake off and integrate and bring back those parts and pieces of you without having to engage the brain. So if that's something that interests you, I'd love to have you experience that with me. And for the weekend, so some play work for you is, first of all, acknowledge where you have perhaps not been in active appreciation of just how resilient and strong you are, and that every challenge that you have come through the other side has actually made you stronger and wiser. So do that first, and then ask yourself a question, and you might want to write this one down, and I don't use the word responsibility because I think that's got quite a lot of heavy energy attached to it, and I think a lot of it is programmed into us that somehow we have to carry the world on our backs. But ask yourself, where have I been complicit, right? So that is knowingly compliance, right, in creating the conditions of your life that you don't want. So write that down, and then maybe go into meditation, or just go and soak in a bath and just ask yourself, where am I being complicit, or where have I been complicit in creating the circumstances or conditions of my life that I don't want? And just notice what starts to come up. Don't put any judgment or conclusion, you probably will, and just allow any of that to come up and be there. And you can just ask your mind, so employ your mind to just be the silent observer, the witness of this, and allow your body to give you the feedback of where you're holding that. And then you can start to go deeper into grieving. Grief is such an important part of healing, and just as death is an important part of living, right? This is where we get back into alignment with our own North Star, with our own season. Are we in a growing season, or are we in a restorative season of hibernation, where we need to actually allow our bodies to catch up with our minds, right? To send the energy down to the roots. So yes, you do get to grieve, and I spoke about that a couple of days ago, but just look at, grieving, allowing yourself to grieve for, what just allow yourself to be open to what might have been, right? Like that sliding door movie. And I've been thinking a lot about that in my own process of really integrating and healing on my next level of unresolved trauma. And then look at how can you resolve trauma that's blocking you from living a beautiful life. So just another question of inquiry. And then looking at bringing it home, right? In that forgiveness, in the integration of looking at how can you step into a deeper level of service by offering what you know to people that might be looking for you. Because you have your own individual strengths, your own individual capacities and gifts that only you have in the world. And then looking at taking it back into futuring, and I'll post the link to my futuring exercise that's very, very powerful, where you are actively in the process. Remember, the brain doesn't know the difference between what is perceived and what's real. So it's a very powerful exercise, and I credit Chris Attard, one of my mentors who I trained in Mindscape work with, taught me a version of this, but I kind of made it into my own, of going into the future. And for some of you that have a very disorganized attachment, you might find this really difficult in the beginning, but it does get easier with practice, right? This is why we need to do daily practice and rituality and training to keep us building on that intuitive trust muscle. And you might not be able to get further than the next 6 months, and that's okay. But see how far out into the future you can go. And if it helps, you could see yourself at the age you will be 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. You can reach out and ask your wise women within, at the age that you'll be in the future, what information and insight and awareness and healing can she contribute to you. You could call in your ancestral helping spirits, your animal guides, your totems. You could call in the Arcturans. You could call in other galactic confederations of healers like Telos. You could call in anybody, your angelic helping spirits. But you could just create this beautiful space where you ask for the energies of the 12th or 13th or 14th or 15th dimension of you in the future to give you the wisdom that you need now to actually reach your goals and your next level of evolution, personal evolution, in how you're serving others. And then just sit and see what comes up. You might just want to do free writing. Or maybe you are going to get a vision and you could go and paint that as your wise woman giving you the information. It's kind of, think of it like plugging into cosmic Google, right? Everything is already written. So if it is already written in your Akashic record, then if it is your Akashic record, wouldn't it make sense that you can go in through futuring and edit and activate the parts and pieces that perhaps are still lying dormant? So I've kind of thrown a lot at you in this little celebration Friday, daily dose of body, mind, medicine. That's just kind of how my mind is working right now. I don't know about you, but I have had such deep sleep during the full moon, which is totally insane for me, because the moon normally activates me and I can't sleep. And then last night I was very aware during my meditation before sleep. I was very, very restless. So I actually used the time, asked my body to take the most restorative rest that it could while I was wide awake, pretty much until 3 o'clock in the night. And then after my meditation, I went into the future, and I actually created a future version of me that's going to support and assist me in creating from a place of deep empowerment and deep trust in how the next 6 months are going to unfold. And I'll keep you posted on that. And I'd love to hear what some of your rituals or some of your ways to call in what you're asking for from the highest version of yourself that is abundant, that is out of lack, that is growing up your wounded child parts as a secure, wise adult that you are now. And to just, again, always, be gentle on yourself, because we don't always come from a place of total expansion. Oftentimes, here's my beautiful cat. Oftentimes we do have judgment, and we wouldn't be human if we weren't looking back at the last 6 months, or perhaps your whole life, and looking at some of those sliding door moments where perhaps there is a little bit of regret or some grief that's ready to move through you. So just allow yourself to have that space of luminal space where you've kind of got one foot still in the past and one step moving into the future version of yourself, and just see what comes up. And as always, I'd love to know some of your insights and some of your wisdom to help everybody else that might be watching this video to create a brilliant future. So have a beautiful weekend, and in case nobody told you today, I love you, I see you, and I honor you, and I'll see you in the future. All right, but I'll also be willing to just love where you are right now in the present, because as I said, if you're not in the present, you can't create a beautiful future. So just a closing one, another question and clearing you could ask is, what limitation of the past are you using to limit the brilliant future by not staying present with everything that is available to you right now, that's supporting you, that the universe has your back, that you have the resources, internal resourcing, internal safe embodiment, as well as an incredible physical and energetic support team. And anything that doesn't allow that to shift or change across all time, space, dimension, and reality, would you be willing to dissolve it, transmute it, delete it across all time? And so it is. All right. I love you all. Thank you for joining me. Bye. Mwah.